So, when Africans look at the history of Islam, right, what it means to be a Muslim, when you look at the history of Christianity and how both these religions entered the continent of Africa, you're going to get some people, right, that are hardcore and die-hard Muslims telling you that, well, just because some Arabs, misused, did some bad things, doesn't mean that the religion itself is bad, right? This is how some people rationalize. They're going to tell you that, well, the religion in itself is not bad. There was just some people in history that did some bad things. And that Islam is different. It's not a religion, right? Some believe it that way. It's a whole complete set. It's a way of life. And then when you look at Christianity, basically you get, I would use the word excuse. You get a similar excuse. You're going to be told that, for example, that, Christianity is a true religion, as some would say, and that people are the one that did and misuse it for the wrong purpose. And so in an attempt for people to misuse it for the wrong purpose, basically that's what happened. People misuse it for the wrong purpose, and now they painted Christianity to look bad, right? The Europeans, they just use it as a tool to enslave people. There's nothing wrong with a religion. Then you will still get people that believe, well, Africans all the way from Egypt, when people started to do all kind of practices, get into sorcery, the Temple of Solomon, all sorts of books were found there. Then we forsake the living God, the true supreme being, and then he used all the other nations to come into the continent of Africa and punish us. As a result, we are being punished, right? And you can link this to some biblical stories about being sprayed, God's people all over the world taken into slavery. Some people believe in that. That's what they hold on to, They have to return to the promised land. Some people, wherever they are, they believe it's the promised land. They don't need to be relocated or be repatriated into any place. They're already in the promised land. So here's the thing with all of these things. It seems like all of this is just idea in people's head. It's like there's no concrete evidence. There's really no concrete evidence to show anything substantial. You know what I mean? These are just ideas that people have strong convictions to, have strong attachment to. And they somehow have the hope, right? The faith that one day somehow it's going to be fulfilled. And the funny thing is that some people use this as an excuse to not want to question the religion, to not want to talk about the things that has happened. They will tell you that, hey, there are bad people everywhere. But how something came into existence, it's important to question that, right? Because you will see, for Christians, if you're not a Christian, they will look at you sideways, right? You are definitely a sinner. Your life can be disposable. You are a deplorable human being. The people that matter the most are the ones that are God's chosen people, right? If you look in the Muslim world, it's the same thing. Any non-Muslim is subjected to be enslaved. So imagine someone who's a Muslim enslaving your family member, and then you yourself, you're Muslim, and that person is a Muslim, and that person tells you that person is your family member, but that person is not a Muslim. So it's okay to enslave them. That's wild, right? But you see, sometimes people are so immersed in the religion, into this faith that they practice, that they don't see the reality of things. They don't see the reality of things, and they accept what they have been taught, what they've been indoctrinated to accept. And this is precisely what happened when Islam or Christianity came into Africa. We now have a region in Africa that is predominantly, right? You find a lot of Arabs there. They even went as far as calling it the White Africa. And then people would say, well, Christianity was in Africa before the Europeans came. The Europeans took it, twisted, and then came back and gave it a new version, the way they made it to be, and then they use it for whatever purpose they use it for. That's not the true way of practicing Christianity, and that we have our own version. You'll be taught in your own language, and blah 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 blah, and all of this. But something that is very distinctive. It really gets interesting, you know. Maybe it's a matter of who had the tool in their hands and what they used the tool for, right? Because at some point there was only black people on the face of this earth. And trying to centralize black people to only the continent of Africa, I think it's also something that is, it's not historically accurate. Because if black people existed and black people are diverse, right? You're gonna go to India and you're gonna find black people there. They may look different from the ones in Africa. And the people in Africa existed before the name Africa came about. So the people themselves, they predate the continent. So when we say black people everywhere and migrated and populated the whole earth, it's not so much of a geographical location per se. Maybe if you want to raise the argument of an original starting point where life began, I can see that. But at the same time, people has always been migrating since the beginning of time. So if, as some believe, black people are the original people, which means we started everything. We knew the way to get to God and worship the true God, if you want to put it like that. We also knew the way to do things otherwise, right? Which some from a religious perspective, they'll say satanic or whatnot, they'll worship the devil. What is your understanding of all of this? What's your conclusion? What is your whole sum up out of this? Because one thing that I find very interesting is that Africans, we don't want to have the conversation of trying to find out what can we do to go back to be the way we were. Because most of us have been conditioned, and I have to say conditioned, right? To believe that our ancestors were demonic. Now, I will tell you this, and this is something that I've realized over the years. Even when you don't speak about religion, just from a spiritism or spirituality perspective, basically, you have to realize that there are good spirit, there are bad spirit, there are bad energies, there are good energies. There, depend on which, if you want to look at it from a frequency spectrum, if you're in low frequencies or in the higher frequencies, how they affect you altogether, the shrakas, and so on and so forth. So you have to be able to discern and to have a sense of dissecting to know exactly. Because to just hear that someone tells you, oh, well, your ancestors were practicing demonic things, what they were doing, it was extremely wrong. Yet these are the same people that said when they came into this continent, they found your ancestors knowing God, knowing what to do, knowing that sleeping with another man's wife is wrong. They had all this way of life. There was nothing that they could teach your ancestors. This is what these very same Europeans documented in their diaries, their journals. But today we find it hard to have this conversation because we just adopted whatever it is that they came with into this continent, and now we are following through with that. For a lot of people, they're intellectually lazy. They don't want to think about it. They don't really want to have the conversation. They just accept what is going on. You know why? My conclusion is this. There was some, this is a bit sensitive, but there was some swapping of destiny happening, if I can put it that way. There was some swapping of destiny happening. And I strongly believe that the Europeans decided to do some blood sacrifice in exchange of wealth. So if you want to say it's in exchange of a deal they made with Satan, if you're a religious person, maybe that's the easiest way for you to understand this. You can put it that way. But I strongly believe something like that happened because those 12.5 million Africans that were taken from the continent of Africa, did you know not all of them made it alive? Did you know that? And so when you begin to think like this, it begs for the question, then whatever happened to some people? Yes, there were some that had health issues, of course, because those conditions weren't easy for people to contain. And then you must also bear in mind that these European nations, they had insurance coverage for those cargoes. People were somehow treated as property, right? They documented this meticulously, especially the Britain. Specifically the Britain, they recorded this. So in some instances, they could discard your ancestors, my ancestors, into the sea and just claim the insurance money when they get there. Because what use is it? I'm taking this person, but they will be of no use. They're sick. And they could care less. They just cast them to the sea, claim the insurance money, and they're okay. But there was also a lot of blood sacrifice because that is why there was a lot of death. And you know, you connect with what is happening today in the continent of Africa. You begin to understand that this is perpetuated. Because look at the Congo, what is happening there. Look at Sudan, what is happening there. Look at Libya, Tunisia, what is happening there. And for some reason, Africans are still trying to get out of the continent of Africa, traveling to Europe in search of better life, dying in the sea, being treated like slaves. We are actually volunteering to go there. They don't need to come and fetch us. This is insane. Imagine the level of mental, I don't even have the word to say. But this is really, really serious. This is really, really, this is concerning, you know. And a lot of people aren't talking about that. Look at Nigeria, what is happening there. And not everybody that is in the continent of Africa is an original African. There are people that have been infiltrated through bloodlines. They came here, and that is why there is no peace between them and the people that they found here. And there are people that are doing expansionism. They have that mentality of expanding. Look at what happened in Rwanda between the Hutsis and the Tutsis. Look at what's happening between Rwanda and Congo, DRC. So again, the thing is that this is serious. And we need to talk about this because we need to deconstruct. We need to deconstruct, and we need to be able to see things for how they are. As painful as this may be, as you may not want to talk about it, but I believe we do have to talk about it. We have to talk about it, and we have to want to talk about it. Because that is the only way we are going to see change come. I'm not gonna continue because I'm hearing noise there in the background and it's gonna affect the audio quality. But yeah, I hope I gave you something to think about. Peace.